The story of 966 Lindley Street began in 1968 when Bridgeport couple Gerard and Laura Gooden adopted a 4-year-old girl of Iroquois Native American descent named Marcia. The year prior, the Goodens' 6-year-old son had died of complications related to cerebral palsy. Not wanting to risk giving birth to another child with the condition, the Goodens decided to adopt Marcia, who was an orphan born in Canada. For the better part of 5 years, Marcia's stay in the Gooden household went by without incident. Marcia was picked on relentlessly in school. This was mostly due to her Native American heritage, which gave her a different skin tone from all the other students. One day, the bullying and beating at school was so intense, Marcia was left in a body brace. This only caused the overprotective Laura Gooden to shut her daughter in even more. Marcia stayed home from school for an extended period of time, and about 6 weeks into that extended stay was when the strange phenomena started happening. It was in late autumn of 1973 that the first incidents occurred. According to quotes from Gerard in the Bridgeport Post, the activity began as gentle knocking sounds, sometime shortly after Halloween of 1973. Gerard thought little of it at the time, thinking it was the work of neighborhood children trying to spook the family. But this knocking became a regular occurrence, and Gerard most frequently observed it while he was alone getting ready for work in the morning. Though he assumed it was the work of neighborhood children, he never caught anyone in the act. Over time, the knocking became louder. The neighbors that the Goodens suspected of perpetrating the ruse moved shortly thereafter, and for almost 2 weeks, the knocking stopped. But when it returned, the Goodens had no explanation, and were starting to become more alarmed. The situation on Lindley Street only grew worse, and far more malevolent as time passed. Most would describe what began to happen as poltergeist activity. Occasional knocks in the morning grew into rattling across the walls at any time of day. Doors would begin opening and closing themselves. The Goodens would leave the household and return to find many of the objects within the house had rearranged themselves or moved to different rooms entirely. Objects even began levitating directly in front of people. Windows would break. Couches and chairs would slide across the floor. Knives would lift off the table and fly into the wall. Most haunting of all, the Goodens started hearing disembodied voices throughout the house. Even Marcia herself was not immune to the strange manifestations. On one occasion, she was levitated a few feet in the air and thrown against the wall by an unseen force. The Goodens made numerous calls to Bridgeport PD in the latter half of 1974, and many of the accounts from the police reports are some of the most bizarre. At one point, the Goodens had 2 lionstone statues on the front porch of their house. Upon entering the house after receiving a call, officers watched as the 2 statues turned to follow them with their eyes. Other officers reported hearing lion roars as they neared the house. Officers also witnessed a considerable amount of levitation and moving objects, including watching the Gooden household television set abruptly slamming over and breaking on the floor. One of the more memorable police reports thoroughly details the levitation of the Goodens' 450-pound refrigerator, explaining how the officers checked for wires or other devices that could have pulled off the stunt. Nothing of the sort was found. Marcia, by all accounts, was an unhappy and lonely child. Her only friend, reportedly, was her orange and white cat, Sam. In the fall of 1974, Sam went to a veterinary hospital for an operation. When he returned home, he supposedly began acting strangely, as if he were trying to talk. Later, the cat would kick at the basement door, yelling, "Let me out, you dirty Frenchman! You dirty Greek!" The Bridgeport Fire Department also received the Goodens' 911 calls, and were frequently visiting the household in addition to the police. Two of the firemen who visited the household were members of the DeRosa family. Living just outside Bridgeport, I am fortunate enough to know and be friends with the DeRosas, so I was able to hear the stories of their accounts. They witnessed much of the stereotypical poltergeist activity, but they had particular trouble from Sam, the Gooden family cat. Upon entering the household, the cat asked one of them how his son was doing. Mr. DeRosa replied that his son was dead, to which Sam smugly replied, "I know," and then ran off, repeatedly calling him a guinea, which is a racial slur for Italian people. By November of 1974, the events reached their peak. The bizarre antics of the little house leaked to the public and attracted crowds that started around 100 people and in the coming weeks swelled to over 2,000 onlookers. Lindley Street was barricaded, and traffic was backed up for a mile or more in all directions. Some spectators stayed after dark to see what would happen at night. Supposedly, it was common for the decorative swans in the front yard to make unearthly sounds. Witnesses, including priests, police, and firemen, reported that although many of the odd events happened when the young girl was around, a large number also occurred when she was either in another room or not even in the house. At one point, the Gooden family contacted the famed paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren. Both experienced strange phenomena while at the house, and of their experiences, Ed Warren said, "It is Marcia's unhappiness that caused the disturbances. It may have been a combination of a psychic disturbance caused by her angry aura and by evil spirits attracted by that aura. There is definitely something inhuman. As far as we are concerned, there were evil spirits in that house." At the height of the incident, the Warrens, priests, police, and firemen were all at the home on a regular basis. Lorraine Warren stated, "Never in my life did I see so many police officers get down on their knees and ask for a priest's blessing as in the Gooden home. They were really at God's mercy in that house, and they knew it." A man by the name of Tim Quinn had worked as a reporter for just a few years when he was sent to cover the haunting on Lindley Street. First, he saw the crowds. Then police told him a religious rite was going on inside the house, and then the Warrens came out. Then he went in. The one thing he remembers seeing is a leather chair sitting on some kind of thin rug that leaves a light mark when you brush across it or step on it. Suddenly, the back of the chair went down, and the chair moved a few feet, he said, but there was no mark on the carpet from the runners underneath the chair. He called it a strange, eerie experience. Meanwhile, with the local and national press covering the case, large and curious crowds were regularly gathering outside the house. At one point, a few zealous neighbors tried to dispel the dark spirits in their own fashion, attempting to set the house on fire. They were quickly stopped. According to the Bridgeport Post, the situation seemed to be getting more intense when a police officer witnessed the young girl Marcia attempting to tip over a TV with her foot when she thought no one was watching. Being caught in the act, she soon confessed that she was responsible for all the activities in the house and explained how she had done it all. The event was soon declared a hoax by the relieved police, who ended the official investigation. Although questions remained as to how Marcia had been able to perpetrate some of the witnessed events when she wasn't in the house or those when she had been in another room. The majority of the investigators, press and curious crowds, all soon went away. At least, that is what the public thought on the matter anyway. In truth, reporting the event as a hoax was a ploy to stop the crowds from swarming the overwhelmed Gooden family. The police superintendent, Joseph Walsh, announced that the incidents were a hoax created by the resident Gooden family's 10-year-old daughter, Marcia, to officially close the case. Police badly needed an acceptable explanation to placate and disperse the crowd camped near the house. Its mere presence was disruptive well beyond that block. It continued to block streets for miles around, causing mischief and property damage while holding valuable law enforcement resources hostage. But behind the scenes, the inquiry into the events at Lindley Street was far from over. Police continued to offer the family protection from the phenomena, even after the case was deemed closed by the police. The police captain also required officers who had been on the scene to assist in a scientific investigation conducted by two agencies: the Psychical Research Foundation, which got its start at Duke University in 1961, and the Spiritual Frontiers Fellowship. It seems obvious that the authorities clearly didn't believe their own hoax explanation. Police and firefighters who witnessed these bizarre events stood by the strange events they had originally reported. The study for which they were interviewed concluded that the events were the doings of a poltergeist, which in German means noisy spirit. Poltergeist activity typically consists of strange noises, footsteps, moving objects, and the destruction of property with no visible physical cause, most often occurring in the environments of prepubescent children. Ed Warren and a priest on the scene also attributed this particular series of events to a demonic presence, in addition to the typical poltergeist manifestations. After Police Chief Walsh's announcements, the crowd dispersed and the frenzy died down. Many complained Walsh was less interested in finding the truth than killing the publicity. In the words of Reverend Bill Charbonneau, a regular priest at the Gooden household, "I know the things that I saw and the things the police saw in my presence, and it was real. It certainly was not explicable in normal terms." Charbonneau said he studied the paranormal at a university in Rome and was called upon many times as an exorcist. While at the Gooden house, he said he was sitting with young Marcia when she screamed at him to turn around. Just then, the bureau slid rapidly from one side of the room to the other, with no one having touched it. Later, while alone in the basement of the house, he heard an ugly voice singing. He found the voice coming from Sam, the cat. Whatever was happening, Charbonneau said, it was centered around Marcia, because she could sense the occurrences as they were about to happen. But she definitely did not create them, he said. "It wasn't a hoax. It definitely wasn't a hoax," he added. "In terms of whether it was poltergeist activity or whatever it was causing it, I was thrown out of the city before I could do anything about it." He said Walsh threatened him with arrest if he ever came back to Bridgeport. Many have compared the events at 966 Lindley Street to the Stephen King novel Carrie. Coincidentally enough, Carrie was published in April of 1974, right in the middle of all the bizarre activity. It also goes without saying that the number of the house isn't inconsequential, being only one reversed 9 away from the sign of the beast. A seminary student also performed the rituals of exorcism at the house. Within the student's 22-page report on the incident are accounts of several events. A lounge chair Marcia was sitting in moved rapidly backwards and overturned. A plastic crucifix exploded from the wall in front of witnesses, and the family cat sang jingle bells in a frighteningly inhuman voice. All the while, continual pounding noises on the walls were occurring at the home. Eventually, the Gooden family had had enough with the strange occurrences, and decided to move away from Bridgeport. As soon as she was old enough, Marcia Gooden moved to Ohio while still a teenager. According to members of the family, Marcia was upset with her parents when she left. It is uncertain if that was due to typical parental-child conflicts or if it was related to the many strange events the family witnessed. Laura Gooden died in 1994 in a fatal car crash in the town of Monroe. Her husband lived into the late 1990s. Marcia Gooden died in February of 2015 at the age of 51, pronounced dead of natural causes. She never came out to the press or public about her experiences. It is likely she wanted to leave that all behind. The case of 966 Lindley Street was officially closed in the 70s, but local residents are still hesitant to go near the place at night. One person who stopped outside the Lindley residence hoping to see something in 2010 experienced a chilling phenomenon. While parked outside, their car horn started blaring, but not in the usual manner. It eerily descended in tone. In their words, the sound was truly evil and truly terrifying. It was as if it were everywhere at once, outside and inside the car, in our ears, in our heads, everywhere. And then just like that, it stopped. As of the creation of this video, the house on 966 Lindley is owned and occupied by an old woman with long white hair. Local residents, many of whom are not familiar with the house's history, still consider the place to be haunted. Strange sounds and eerie lights still emanate from the property on rare occasion, and locals are wary of going near the house at night. Living so close to the area, I plan to do a follow-up video sometime this summer, after I spend a night parked outside the house myself.